Hi everybody! How many of you have heard the saying, the grass is greener on the other side? Yeah? Well, today I'm going to read a story about a cat who thinks that exact same way. She's not happy with how things are going at her house, so she's deciding to go and figure out what else the world has to offer for her. How many of you have been mad or upset with something at home and you thought it would just be easier for me to run away? Well, we're going to find out what happens to this cat. Maybe it'll be great, or maybe she'll realize that she had things better than she thought she did. Cat, You Better Come Home by Garrison Keillor. Paintings by Steve Johnson and Lou Fancher. My cat pleaded and my cat cried for me to open up the door and let her go outside. Then she sat on the lawn underneath a tree, pretending that she couldn't hear me. As I said, "Cat, you better come home. There's dogs in the dark waiting to attack, and cat hawks looking for a late night snack. So cat, you better come home." Puff looked away and tossed her head. "I may or may not come," she said. "I'm a cat who's deeply dissatisfied. I'll let you know when I decide." I said, "Cat, you better come home. I could close this door and lock the bolt, and you'll spend the night in the snow and cold. So cat, you better come home." She said, "I'd rather be a cat who meets a terrible fate than live with a man who can't appreciate that a cat is independent and a true highbrow and needs a little high-class chow. I've seen the food that you feed your guest, the turkey and the tuna and the chicken breast. And do you share it with your cat? No, sir, no way. Not even the liver pate." And I said, "Cat, you better come home. I'm not about to stand here and argue with a cat. What would the next door neighbors think of that? Cat, you better come home." "Well, I never," she said, and she turned in a huff. "You've seen the last of your dear cat, Puff." She left with a humph and a sardonic laugh, and she left for over a year and a half. I felt so bad, full of guilt and shame, I walked around town calling her name, with a great big platter of Chateaubriand and an ounce of caviar in my hand. "Oh, cat, I wish you'd come home. Come home, old Puff, come home to us. There's a lot of new benefits I'd like to discuss. Oh, cat, please come home." I saw her 6 months later in a cat magazine. She was the #1 TV cat food queen, with a fat contract with a cat food firm, and her hair was done up in a perm. I could tell it was Puff, even though she was wrapped in a white mink sole and her teeth were capped. She was lying on a beach in the south of Greece, and she had changed her name to Clarice. In the story it said she was voted cat of all cats by the Greeks, and it quoted a noted poet who said, "Clarice is a national treasure and centerpiece." And it said that she lived in a 10-room manse and ate fresh fish flown in from France, and that famous people visited her, and she spoke to them in a European purr. "Oh, cat, you better come home. You're no queen, you're Puff. You're you, and your fans can't love you like your true friends do. Oh, cat, you better come home." She moved to a villa in Valaisannes, then to Copenhagen with a dog named Jens. She had rich clothes, she had rich friends. Her entourage was just immense. Cooks and maids with long blonde braids, a big brass band for her parades, a string of minions to cringe and truckle, 2 comedians to make her chuckle. A swimming instructor and a butler named Bruce, and a ballet coach and a German masseuse. Such luxuries, the vast expense. The thing she didn't have was common sense. She gave away gifts like she was St. Nicholas. Her diamond bill was just ridiculous. Jen saw the bill and began to growl, and she dumped that dog for a great horned owl. "Oh, cat, you better come home. You're at the top now, and you're riding high, but they'll dump you in the river when the well runs dry. So cat, You better come home. She spent $1 gazillion on a yacht built in the shape of a flower pot, and nobody told her that a pot won't float, so she sailed from Copenhagen with her owl dreamboat. And the champagne popped, and the music played, and the people clapped on the promenade. And the boat went blop, and the owl cried hoo, and Puff cried no, and the owl flew as the boat sang blah 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 blah. And the cat went down in the watery abyss. Everyone stood by the waterside and watched the bubbles and softly cried, "Oh, darling cat, oh, angel flower," and a team of divers dove for an hour. And when it got too sad to watch 'em, they hung out a sign, "Requiescat passeum," and went to feast at La Café Triste, assuming the beast was at least deceased. And that was the last I heard until early one morning when the house was still, came a scratch, scratch, scratch from the windowsill. And there with her nose pressed against the pane, burrs in her fur and drenched from the rain, with tears in her ears and big puffy eyelids, stood a former top cat who had hid the skids. She limped along on a homemade crutch. She could hardly stand, she weighed so much. Approximately 93 pounds. No wonder her tail dragged on the ground, and her tongue hung out on her double chin. She looked like something the cat dragged in. Big dark pouches underneath her eyes. She cried, "It's me! Surprise!" "Oh, cat, I'm glad you came home. No need to explain, my old cat friend. I'm just glad to have you back again. Yes, cat, I'm so glad you came home." I picked her up, my old fur sack. She cried, "Easy, Jack! Take it easy on my back. I've got bad back problems and I'm not too swift on account of the rich, rich life I've lived. I'm gonna give up gravy and goldfish pies, rag out of robin thighs, guppy fries and frog fillet, mouse morsels served flambe, white rats and chocolate sauce, soup a la collie paws, chihuahuas and cheddar cheese, chuck roast of chickadees, and one more thing, I know it well, a cat should never drink muscatel." She went on a high-fiber diet at once, and she was her old self in about 2 months. With a spring in her step and a gleam in her eye, she'd hop to the windowsill, sit there, and sigh. If other cats could only know to hang their hats on the status quo, and make the best of what they've got, and be who you are, and not what you're not. For the very worst thing that a cat can do is make all of its dreams come true. So cats, you better come home. You can seek your fortune, but nevertheless, remember your name and your address, because someday you'll need to come home.